conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on the methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference in adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. Now we read the Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which examines the Dharmas, called profound illumination. At the same time Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, "How should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge?" And Avalokiteshvara answered, "Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsely and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, where there is no deception.
In transcendent knowledge,
The mantra is proclaimed. Tagyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswaha. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, "Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice." When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering with the humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. And now we generate bodhicitta. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by Buddha's wisdom, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So, we normally recite one rosary of the Medicine Buddha mantra, and we do that really dedicating this to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's just had a knee replacement and is recovering from that. So the Medicine Buddha mantra is, do some of you know it? Tadyata Om Bengatse Bengatse Maha Bengatse Raja Samudgate Svaha. Sorry?
That's the way, what?
It's not written anywhere
written,
here,
no.
no. Recite Om Mani Padme Hum or something that you know. Do you know the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum? It's the mantra of compassion, and it is, we consider His Holiness the Dalai Lama to be, if you were to take the compassionate quality of all enlightened beings and give that a form, a human form, that would be His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the mantra of that, or of that being, that quality, we can say, is Om Mani Padme Hum. So you can recite Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum? Okay. So let's recite Om Mani Padme Hum. We'll do one rosary of Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. So, we have been discussing for the last few weeks this book, Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World by the Dalai Lama. And it's an attempt to introduce a system of ethical behavior that is not tied to any religion, that is not weighed down by any sort of dogma. And we've been slowly exploring what he presents in this book. That's really what our two classes at the Tibet Center are devoted to. So, do we have extra books that might help you? So, yeah. Yes, we have some.
Two copies, actually.
Okay, so
We'll share.
one here and one here. One for the ladies and one for the gentlemen.
Oh, how wonderful, yes.
So
The presidents soon.
what? First of all, this is as much a discussion as it is a class.
Don't worry about the cat.
And so to bring you up to where what we've been discussing, His Holiness is presenting the idea that the way by which we should approach the challenges, the problems that we encounter in life, or the part of it that we can really work on is our motivation. And the motivation to cultivate is compassion. And so he presents compassion, which is the wish to remove the suffering of others. So compassion is not necessarily going out and helping others. I mean, that's a good thing, of course. Once you have compassion, that's what you would do. But in order to have the wish to help others, you have to cultivate this thought. And so the cultivation of the thought is the first aspect of what he's suggesting. Compassion is a motivation. Compassion is an attitude, and compassion can be cultivated in one by thinking of a few things. First of all, recognizing that we ourselves are in a state of suffering. That if you go beyond the sort of coarser elements or coarser qualities of suffering, if you see the dissatisfactions that we experience, even when we're comfortable and happy, that happiness comes to an end, and we're confronted with the pain of being, the pain of just being. And then you have what is called the all-pervasive suffering of existence. And as long as we hold on to a sense of self, as long as we hold on to some kind of cherishing of me, we are always going to be motivated to act upon that in a way that will eventually bring us dissatisfaction, unhappiness. And so if we come to acknowledge our state of suffering, if we come to acknowledge that that's simply the state of life, that's the way things are, out of that recognition, we begin to recognize that others are experiencing the same. And we go on to think about how dependent we are on others for everything we have. I mean, we're sitting here comfortably this evening. Someone built this house, someone created this floor, someone created this carpet, someone created the ventilation system that enables us to breathe, the electricity that brings in the light that enables us to function. Everything that we have, the roadways by which we've gotten here, the production of the food that we eat to survive, the clothes that we're wearing, we are totally dependent on infinite others for everything we have. And those others are experiencing the same suffering, difficulties, challenges that we are. And if we, having recognized our own state of suffering, recognized our dependence on others, we begin to feel the suffering that they are experiencing and wish to remove that. Our hearts begin to open up to them. That's compassion. we had a debate last night on whether you can have that sense of compassion towards your own problems. And we though we feel sorry for ourselves in the difficulties that we confront in life, and we all confront difficulties in life, that's not compassion. That's something else. Compassion is an attitude that we work at developing towards other people's difficulties. And the deeper our compassion is, the more we feel that, the more we truly wish to remove the suffering of others, what His Holiness is suggesting here is the happier we are. That wish to help others actually brings about a deeper sense of happiness within ourselves. However, to act upon that suffering, we have to figure out the best way to actually go about it. And we're all rather limited in our judgments, in the wisdom by which we engage in life. And so discernment is necessary, the ability to discern what to do and how to do it. Then His Holiness says something rather interesting. He says, if you approach, he says, there's no way in which you will know all the conditions that you are going to confront as you work towards implementing this attitude of compassion. However, if you have compassion and if you attempt to engage with discernment or wisdom, don't worry. You're doing the best you can. And he actually says in the, let's see if we can, I think 80. Nor can we foresee all the consequences of our actions. There is always bound to be some element of uncertainty. It is important to acknowledge this, but it should not worry us. Still less should it make us despair of the value of rational assessment. So if we approach a problem with applying as much discernment as we can, and if we approach it with compassion, that's the best we can do. And last night what we were discussing was from a Buddhist point of view, we talk about karma. We talk about the fact that the challenges that we confront in life, the difficulties that we experience, and the good things as well, are all due to our past actions. There is nothing that we experience in life that we have not caused by actions in a past life, in a very, very far past life or a more recent past life. But the fact that I'm sitting here with all of you and we're together in this way is due to some past what would you call it? You would call it a mutual karmic causes that are sort of flourishing or arising this evening, bringing us all together. If we hadn't each engaged in whatever actions in the past to deserve this, we wouldn't be here. Now, each of us comes here from a totally different set of actions. It's not as if we all were hanging out 10 lifetimes ago someplace and we're all here together again. No. We've all come here due to our deserving it from our separate paths. And we're all experiencing it totally differently. You from your side, you from your side, you from your... Each of us is experiencing this in your own individual way. But we're sharing the fact that we're sitting at 502 North Ridgewood Road in South Orange, New Jersey, for whatever reason. And so the experience that we have, the place where we arrive, is the result of our past actions. Now, I think that there are people who get very upset by the notion that it's like a judgment they feel on, let's say, a child who is ill or things like that. I think it's really improper to think of this as a judgment. We all have a store of past actions ready to arise. So it's not as if we look at someone and say, you deserve that, you acted badly. No, it's not like that. This whole sort of karmic view of the world is something by which we should view ourselves, and we should acknowledge from our side that I am here as a result of my past actions, and that I do, given this dynamic, have the freedom, the power to actually determine the future. The way I act in respect to the situation that I am responsible for will determine the future. So when people say, well, what was my past like? You can say you can see what your past was like, or how you behaved in the past, by how you are, what your circumstances are here at this time. You can see, you can determine your future by seeing how you're behaving now. So in a sense, everything is in our hands. This is a sort of unique, well, it's not so unique. It's when you go to the East, whether Hindus, Buddhists, most people accept the idea of karma. And regrettably, we find in the way it is implemented culturally in a place like India, you have these sort of monstrous sort of aberrations in the application, such as the caste system, where society imposes upon you sort of limitations or categorizations that sort of box you in due to where it is felt you deserve to be because of your past actions. And it's a gross misuse of a system that actually should empower us to make use of the opportunities that we have now, given the situation that we are in as a result of our past lives. So we should really see this karma, or the laws of cause and effect, as being an opportunity. So with that, as we approach the situation that we're living in, His Holiness is saying there's no way that we can know everything. There's no way that we can approach our engagement in life with full knowledge of what's going to happen, or how best to tread in order to most effectively benefit a situation or society or whatever. All we can do is approach it with a good motivation, with compassion, with that wish to remove the suffering of others. And by coming to it with as much wisdom, with as much discernment, with as much scrutiny, to make sure that we are doing our best to help. If we approach any situation with those two things, we are doing good, and we can relax about it. So that's...
So karma is not determinism, you would say. No, it's just karma, that's it, that's why that happened.
Well, karma has determined where we
But
are.
it's not determinism in that it's a fixed thing that's gonna happen no matter what, you know.
So, if we judge where we are right now,
Right.
and we can't do anything about it because we're
No.
already here, this is due to karma.
Right.
What we do with this determines the future.
That's right.
So we should never think of it as being fatalistic.
Yeah, it's a better word.
So our fate is in our hands, but our situation is due to our past life.
Yes.
That's and they say there are debates in the monastery about if everything is caused by our past. Do the laws of cause and effect actually permit free will? Isn't what we are going to do already determined by the formation that came before?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of free will? And the response is,
Maybe.
don't think like that. Determine that you have free will. Assume that you have free will. That's that attitude is very important. So you may want to pull up a chair from there. It is considered wrong to say that you don't have free will. It is important to engage in this process with the belief that you are responsible, not just have free will, but are responsible for the way you behave. And you have to assume that responsibility. So what we've been doing is reading this book together and discussing as we go along. So I'm going to go over what we, a little bit of what we've already done. So at the bottom of page 80, this uncertainty, the uncertainty of life, is another reason why the uncertainty, meaning the fact that we are unable to know all the different facts within a situation to determine how best to act, is another reason why ethics must be grounded at the level of motivation. As I've said, rather than purely on consideration of consequences. The fact is, the consequences of our actions are often not within our control. Where we do have control is at the level of motivation and in deploying our critical faculties, our determination. So,
Our discernment, right? You said determination. I'm correcting you.
Good.
Good efforts.
When we combine these two elements, discernment and motivation or compassion, we can ensure that we're doing our best, and that's as good as we can do. So yes, Tony says, do you have any questions?
Discussions, complaints.
It's nice to see
Asking a
you.
question.
Whenever people talk about karma, I feel that they see it as this thing that's self-existent and attaches itself to what exactly?
So karma means action. And when we talk about karma as action, what we are talking about specifically is the mental action that accompanies our physical or verbal actions. So karma really means motivation. Karma, when we say karma, when we talk about actions, we are talking about the past actions, virtuous, selfish, let's say getting angry, whatever, those acts and you know, if you're walking down, if you hit someone with real anger, and you want to hurt them, that's a karma. If you scold your child and you give them a little swat to prevent them from doing something dangerous, and you're doing it with concern for your child, that's also a karma. It's the same hit, but in one case it's done with a motivation that is to help, and in the other it's done with anger. So the karmic results of those two actions will be totally different.
I see that.
But what I didn't understand where you were.
Well, I've been trying to wrap my head around the karma and the past lives, and I'm having a problem with time, because time is supposedly linear, but time doesn't really exist as such. So I don't think there's really an answer to it.
Well, let's treat time as linear, just so that we're all on the same.
I know I should stay there on the linear. And it's nice to know that, you know, I say sometimes to myself, oh, if you do that, that's going to be, if I swear at this other driver, that's bad. I know it's
It always
bad,
comes
but
down.
it feels so good sometimes. But, yeah, I think maybe it's easier to just, because everyone understands it. Everyone
Which
knows
understands what?
that our actions, or even, well, maybe not so much the intentions behind it, but our actions. I think a lot of people now in our common culture have accepted that karma is something that possibly will affect your future.
Mm-hmm.
There's instant karma, for instance.
But you said something that I don't know that I've heard expressed before as karma in terms of what brought you here, that is not what moves you forward from here or what you do next. That was a nice way to delineate it.
So you'll still, I mean, you're living in your house in
Maplewood.
Maplewood, and the causes for your living in that house in Maplewood, and you're having a comfortable existence within a free world environment, or all the things that the good stuff that you're experiencing, are all due to your good behavior in the past. Kindness to others, generosity, whatever they are. And today, you have, right now, you could get up and shout at us all and run out and burn the house down, right? Could. And that would be not so good karma for your future. But
Right.
you'd still go home to your house and you'd have all your, so that the results of your past are still, you will experience them today and tomorrow, and you might end up in jail if you, but please don't. Anyway, so I don't know. I was saying that just in terms of the past actions will continue to influence you into the future, and your present actions will also influence you into the future. Now, even you're talking about shouting at the driver, even your temper is the result of your past temper. Temper, and people say, I have a bad temper. You know, they inhabit that. They feel as if this is a natural quality of theirs. We can all change our temper, but the fact that we are so overwhelmed by a particular mental quality, all comes from the past.
So, road rage in my case. But I've actually tried to, sometimes I get in the car and I decide that I'm gonna let it go. I even write in my little book today, I'm gonna let someone go that is pushing in, you know, whatever. And, yeah.
I never get road rage. I have something else, but
How do you handle the subway?
I take road rage because
Subway rage.
it's not often.
There was a guy who was making a film on Western Buddhist teachers, and David Cherniak
Oh, yeah, the Canadian.
From- for
Long time.
Canadian television.
Yeah.
And he was going around the country in one of those big mobile home things you drive, you know, it's a house. And he came to see me. I was living on 10th Street in New York City. And he said, I'll be there at 3 o'clock to film. And he arrived at 3 o'clock exactly. He rang my doorbell. And I said, how'd you get here? And he said, I came in my van. I said, where'd you park it? He said, I parked it right in front of your home. I said, it's impossible, 10th Street, you can't park. He said, oh no, I have good parking karma. I said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
He said, I always let people go in front of me. He said, I'm always gracious to other people.
It worked.
He
You parked.
I
and
assure
and
you,
then-
there are no spots on 10th Street.
I know. I tried to park there last time. to get past. Yeah, even in front of a hydrant, sometimes you can illegally park.
Oh.
Oh, he's lucky.
Not
That's
lucky.
common. That's right. He had good parking.
Luck doesn't come into the picture at all. Luck is
There's no such thing.
yeah, luck is...
Nothing's random.
So, I'll go on page 81. All the uses of discernment outlined above give us understanding, and the reflection on that understanding gives us a deeper and more enduring awareness. When discernment is combined with a compassionate motivation, we have two key components of a comprehensive approach to ethics and spiritual well-being in a secular context. So the whole point here is to cultivate a secular context for ethical behavior. So if we combine discernment with a compassionate motivation, those are the two elements, the two components by which we create a spiritual an ethical and spiritual well-being. These two components, compassion and discernment, are mutually reinforcing. Compassion, by reducing fear and distrust, creates a space in our hearts and minds that is calm and settled, and this space makes it much easier for us to exercise discernment or intelligence. So compassion calms us and enables us to actually be discerning about how we're going to act. Similarly, discernment can strengthen our conviction of the necessity and the benefits of compassion. So these are the two elements that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is proposing, and specifically he's saying these things, we don't have to bring religion into the picture. We don't have to bring a dogmatic structure, a system of beliefs. There are those who believe that ethical behavior is somehow hooked into religion. That without religion, you're not going to have ethics. That ethics are, I suppose, the idea is that they come from God. That there's something holy that we can't really figure out on our own. And His Holiness is saying, no, there's a logic to it, and this is the logic. So, anything you want to say?
Oh, good, that's true. Eugene, you're quiet?
Okay, I mean, sure, I can say something.
A little bit.
In the Western philosophy context, ethics is usually discussed together with, I guess you would use the term jurisprudence, which is like a very fancy word for law, where the difference is ethics is like what is right, whereas law would be how to tell whether someone else is, when something bad happens, how do you decide what to do? So, from a Western philosophy perspective, the problem with saying that what makes something good or bad is one's motivation is that if you were to try to use it as a theory of jurisprudence, it's difficult to do so because you cannot observe another person's motivation. I don't know that I really, it's just like a comment, I guess.
Yeah, no, right.
But I mean, I think like for a Western philosopher, this would be the hang up. Is that okay? So say like if I'm a judge, or if I'm on a jury, right? I have to infer another person's motivation, and how do I do that?
So here, I think that we are all working towards being the judge. And we are being the judge over our own actions.
Yes, this applies to us.
Yep.
Right? I'm just saying, like, just looking at it through the Western angle, right? Through the angle of a Western philosopher, the kind of like objection that they would raise is that they would ask, okay, how do I apply this to constructing legal systems?
So we are constructing our own legal system, and we have to developing some kind of awareness of our own actions. Basically, ethical behavior. We have to cultivate a responsibility towards watching over ourselves. From a Buddhist point of view, the mindfulness with which we engage in life is that self-judgment. Here, in this more secular context, it's what His Holiness has proposed is that if we approach it by working on our motivation, by working on the wisdom that complements or is conjoined with that motivation, and working at developing. Compassion is not something that it's not like a switch. We have to work at it. Discernment is also not like a switch. We have to develop it, and that's the work.
And I'm happy to set that issue aside. Of like, I was just making a comment that like
we're not holding you to it.
For what it's worth, I think that at the end of the day, Westerners would basically agree that if you're sitting on the jury, at the end of the day, you're also being asked to kind of like do your best to deduce that person's motivation. Right? Because like most laws, especially laws around serious crimes in Western countries, require intent. In other words, motivation to commit the wrong and knowing that it is wrong. And when you're sitting on the jury, you're just doing your best to deduce that person's motivation. So it boils down to the same thing His Holiness is saying. That's my opinion. I don't know, I'm some expert. But.
So, and again, I'm going to use what you've just said to say that as we apply this to ourselves, as we assume the responsibility of being our own judge, it is, as I've said in the past, really important for us to judge ourselves. We're meant to do this in the evening before we go to sleep, go over our day and say, gosh, I shouted at this driver. And sorry. Sorry? He never heard you. Okay.
He
So
doesn't speak your language.
really scrutinizing our actions. And the wonderful thing about actions is that though they say that any karmic action you engage in is going to eventually raise its ugly head in the future, that there's no way that we can escape the results of our actions. What we can do is diffuse them or dissolve them. And if we've engaged in actions that are, let's say, regrettable, and we actually regret them, we acknowledge them, and we really deeply have regret for having engaged in them, and actually determine that we are going to work at refraining from repeating, that in itself dissolves it. So if you say, oh, that was terrible the way I shouted at that guy, and and you can think of the people whom you, I'm sorry to sort of be aiming this at you, I feel terribly.
You take him away from the team.
I understand.
This is my karma I'm gonna get.
Yeah.
If we think that way, and if we think of how we get upset, we can't sleep at night out of regret for having acted that way, or just out of the whatever it is that consumes us as a result of having gotten angry. We've all gotten angry. We know what it feels like, and then we can't sleep, and we're thinking over and over, and all the terrible things that accompany it. And if we go over that thought, and we can think of, we have examples, all of us, of people who have accepted things peacefully, who have not gotten, and we can admire that, and we can see how situations seem to just work out better when that is the way they're approached, and that whole thought process helps us. And as I say, if we develop regret and we develop the determination to refrain from acting however we've acted in the future, that dissolves the negative or power of that action. And then in the morning, the next morning, you determine to refrain. You say, today, or for the next hour. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, you determine not to get angry for 2 hours, or 1 hour. And you just, even though you know that for the next hour you're going to be all alone at home, if you determine to not get angry for 1 hour, you've accomplished something. And then you can stretch it to 2 hours, and then to 3, like that. These are the sort of games that we can play with ourselves to develop sort of positive habits or positive ways.
It's practical, very practical.
So our situation is determined by our actions, and we do have the power to dissolve or diffuse certain actions. We can actually fiddle with the future karma. I mean, if we've done something and we develop regret, that the future power of that karma is affected in a good way.
can make a mistake, and the mistake can actually teach you bigger things.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually helpful in that way, because you have to really explore, well, why am I doing this, and how can I do this better? How can I be more compassionate? Like maybe that guy had to get to work really early and that's why he cut me off. Or maybe his wife shouted at him, or maybe he lost his job, and whatever goes on in his life, maybe, you know, when you start thinking about, oh my God, what could be going on in this person's life that makes them behave that way? You know, how can I just let him in? You know, he needs it more than I do, obviously. It can be a great teacher.
And all those thoughts, if we sit, you know, people think of meditation as, you know, you're following your breath or whatever, but thinking like what you just described is analytical meditation. And His Holiness often says it's the most important meditation. The meditation where we actually think something through and we come to a conclusion and we really work at having it affect us in some way, that's the most important form of meditation. Anything else? So, we can begin Chapter 7, Ethics in Our Shared World. At my residence in Dharamsala, the hill station in northern India, which has been my home since the early 1960s, is my daily habit to rise early, normally around 3:30. After some hours of mental exercises, i.e. meditation and contemplation, I generally listen to the world news on the radio. Most often, I tune in to the BBC World Service. It is a routine I have followed for many years as a way of staying in touch with events around the world. Now, when I went off to India to become a monk and join the monastery, and every morning I would listen to the BBC. And India is, it's half an hour different from everywhere else in the world. So it's
9.5 hours difference.
9.5 hours difference, 10.5 hours difference, depending on daylight saving or whatever. But it's, so the BBC comes on the half hour. And I mean, when I went out to become a monk, I had a wind-up watch, and I would be there. Do you remember the dung, 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 dung? And then you wanted that second hand to go. I mean, I was a maniac about this. I wanted.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And then came the news, and I heard someone. So His Holiness had these little Sony short-wave radios, because in those days there was no internet or anything.
Sony shortwave.
And His Holiness, someone said, "Your Holiness, you have so many radios. Isn't this sort of a form of attachment?" And His Holiness said, "Not at all. I have one radio next to my bed. I have one radio in the office. I have one radio where I have my breakfast. I have one radio where I do my meditation. I have..." And all the radios were set to the BBC, so that at any point he could touch that at the half hour and get the world news, specifically to hear about the events of the world and to contemplate. And as he says here, as I listen to the constant stream of reports about money and finance, about crises and conflicts and war, it often strikes me that the complex problems we face in the world, problems of corruption, environment, politics, and so on, almost always indicate a failure of moral ethics and inner values. At every level, we see a lack of self-discipline. Many problems are also due to failures of discernment, of short-sightedness or narrow-mindedness. Of course, the causes and conditions of particular problems can be immensely complex. The seeds of ethnic violence, rebellion, and war, for example, almost invariably date back decades or even centuries. But still, if we are really interested in tackling our problems at their roots, whether we are talking about human conflicts, poverty, or environmental destruction, we have to recognize that they are ultimately related to issues of ethics. Our shared problems do not fall from the sky, nor are they created by some higher force. For the most part, they're products of human action and human error. If human action can create these problems in the first place, then surely we humans must have the capacity as well as the responsibility to find their solutions. The only way we can put them right is by changing our outlook and our ways, and by taking action. So, what do you have to say about
That is, he's right, but trace all these events back to the minds that created them.
Well, it's an extraordinary way to listen to the radio.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really, and you know, he has written this book specifically to say, okay, these are the problems that we hear on the radio. This is the way we, as individuals, have to engage in helping the situation.
Under the assumption that it can be changed. It's very positive to hear that. Whether people actually implement it, but I mean, it's possible.
Well, is it possible?
We will see.
Well, you cannot make other people do it, right?
Anything that will.
So all we can do is do it ourselves. Yeah, and so it's interesting that he's called Buddy, that Buddy has come in and meowed, because there is a big difference between the capacity that we have to change situations and the capacity that Buddy has. And the extraordinary thing that we humans have is an ability to act with thought, to actually think about and determine what the best way to behave in order to help is. We also have the extraordinary ability to harm and to do things. We can create far more destruction in the world than Buddy can. Buddy, knocks over glasses and can be challenging, but I know that I can do far more harm.
Darren, do we have names?
No names.
So it's 8:00. If anyone wants to, we can continue to discuss. If not, we will say a sort of ending prayer. Okay. So we recite the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. The Noble Three Jewels, I'm explaining, I don't know, you may know these things well. In Buddhism, you have the Buddha, his doctrine, his teaching, the Dharma it's called, and the Sangha, which is the spiritual community that engages in implementing the teachings. And a Buddhist is someone who takes refuge in or accepts the Buddha, the teacher, his teaching, and the community as sources of protection or sources of guidance. And so here we recite this where we are contemplating, we are recollecting the qualities of a Buddha, of the doctrine, the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and the spiritual community who is immersed in the implementation of those teachings. So we usually recite this and dedicating this to people who are deceased, who have recently passed away. So people sometimes give us names of people to think of as we read this. So apparently there are no names. No one
There's so
died.
many people. No one died. There's so many. No one. Think of all the places of conflict in the world and wish that those people who died in that situation be reborn so they can correct stuff.
So I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavat, Tathagata, Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans, is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore, their fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. So we end with a prayer. There's in here a prayer for a swift return. This is the prayer that was composed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama for a swift return of Chungla Rinpoche. So, exalted wisdom of all victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of one wearing saffron robes, Guru Lotsang Tugwang Tojichang, please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch of doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast ways of aspirational prayers, Lord of speech of the Lord Victor's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Though holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening, yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you till cyclic existence end, to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Dharmakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta, drawn by 7 steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings, and wish-fulfilling jewel. Return as the glory of Losang Tempe, magnificent truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Karmayama, and Srimati Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors. May you spontaneously fulfill our wishes, the swift blossoming of the reincarnation's fresh and light.